All right, so Module 8, Homework 2. Module 8, Homework 2, rational equations and problem solving. So we're going to solve a formula for a specific variable. We're going to solve word problems involving rates. So solving the equation for t, if we have r equals 3 over 2t plus 37, I want to try to get t by itself. So trying to get t by itself. What would I do first? What would I do first? Subtract 37 from both sides. So we have r minus 37 equals 3 over 2t. R minus 37 equals 3 over 2t. Now what? Divide by 3 halves. Divide by 3 over 2. So that way those cancel. We're left over rewriting this just like a complex fractions that we did earlier. T equals r minus 37 divided by 3 over 2. How do we divide fractions? Stay, change, flip. So it's going to stay t equals r minus 37. Our operation is going to change from division to multiplication, and we're going to flip our second fraction, so 2 over 3. So we're left over with t equals 2/3 r minus 37. Final answer. Remember for these, order of operations. Ms. PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We're adding and subtracting are the same thing, so it really goes the same thing from left to right. Multiplying and dividing are the same thing from left to right. We are solving, so now we're working backwards. So that means we have to work backwards through our order of operations. So that's why we worry about adding and subtracting first. We subtracted 37 from both sides first, and then we divided by 3 over 2. We got t by itself, we're done. Make sure on my math lab, if the directions or if the problem says capital R and capital T, that whenever you type in your answer, you also use capital R and capital T. If you did lowercase r in your answer, it would mark it wrong. So be careful with that. Yeah?
Can you leave it r minus 37 divided by 3 over 2, or is that wrong?
It'll mark it wrong. And once you go further, it's further simplified. Good question. Other questions? Yes, sir.
How do you know that r minus 37 divided by 3 over 2 was dividing fractions? Like, how do you know that you had the stage change flip?
Right, because there's a fraction right here. So I can rewrite that if you want as another.
I see that one, but how do we know that
The first
r
one?
minus 37?
I can write
assume
it.
that would be over 1.
Bingo. Bingo, bingo. So I can write it as, and I was going to do that, and then I honestly forgot to go back. Does that help? Other questions? Other questions? Next example, solve the equation for C. We have I equals V minus C divided by L. V minus C divided by L. So working from the outside in. Let's get rid of that L first. It's dividing, so what's the opposite of dividing? Multiplying, so I can multiply both sides by L. So that way L divided by L cancels out. We're left over with Li equals V minus C. Trying to get C by itself, what should I do next?
Subtract V.
Subtract V. V minus V cancels out, goes to 0. So Li minus V equals negative C.
Divide by -1.
Divide by -1 to get rid of that negative to get C by itself. So I could say C equals negative Li minus V. Final answer. Remember, I can write that negative on the bottom, on the top, or out front. If you want to write negative 1 times Li minus V, that's fine too, as long as there's a negative there. There's one similar to this next one on test 1. So we have done these before, just bringing it back because people don't like them. So what do? We bring it back. Yeah. Questions for me? Let's do another one. We're solving the next one for H. We're getting H by itself. We have S equals H times A plus F all over 2. What do you want to do first?
Multiply by 2.
Multiply by 2. Perfect. So it's being divided by 2. We can do the opposite, and we can multiply both sides by 2. So we have 2S equals H times A plus F. So what's happening to H? We're trying to get H by itself. What's happening to H? Being multiplied times A plus F. So what do I need to do to get rid of A plus F? Divide. Divide both sides by A plus F. So that way those cancel, and we have H equals 2S all over A plus F as our final answer. Questions for me? How can I help you? Questions for me? How can I help you? Next page. Last one, solving for W. If we have R equals AW over A plus W. I'm trying to get W by itself. I see 2 separate W's. I can't combine them right now. Can't combine them. I don't like fractions. Let's get rid of fractions. So how could I get rid of a fraction? Multiply everything by the LCD. So what's our denominator here? A plus W. So let's go ahead and let's multiply both sides by A plus W. So that way those cancel out. We're left with R times A plus W equals AW. Still doesn't really help me, so we need to do something else. What else should we do?
Divide by A.
Okay, or distribute. No, you're a step ahead of me. You're good. Distribute. We have RA plus RW equals AW. We're getting closer. Now I have 2 separate terms with W. So let's go ahead and try to combine these 2 W's onto the same side. So how do I bring that RW over with the AW? Subtract RW from both sides. So that'll leave us with RA equals AW minus RW. What do you notice? Remember, we're trying to solve for W, getting W by itself. What do you notice? Yeah, GCF, they both have a W, so we can factor out that GCF of W. So we're left with RA equals W. We're left over with A minus R. We're factoring or dividing out that W from both sides. So we're left with A minus R. So now we have W by itself, so that's good. We're getting closer. Last step to get W completely by itself. Divide by A minus R. So our final answer is W equals RA over A minus R. Final answer. Why can't our R's cancel?
Because part of the factor.
Yep, it's part of a factor. It's not like terms. Questions for me? Questions for me? So these last examples are word problems. We can set them up as proportions. You'll like them. So it says a camel could drink 15 gallons of water in 10 minutes. At this rate, how much water can the camel drink in 14 minutes? Recall that rates can be expressed as fractions, so that's why it goes in this fraction section. So we have the rate. We have 15 gallons of water in 10 minutes. So I can write that as a rate. I can write that rate as a fraction. So 15 gallons in 10 minutes. 15 gallons in 10 minutes. At this rate, so with the same rate, so it equals how much water? I don't know, so we're going to call that X. So X gallons in 14 minutes. Notice gallons is on top for both rates, for both fractions. Minutes is on the bottom for both rates, for both fractions. How do I solve a proportion? How do I solve something set up like this?
Cross multiply.
Cross multiply.
Don't ever want to say that.
I know. I'll show you why in a second. Cross multiply. 10 times x is 10x equals 15 times 14. To 10, yes. X times 10 is 10x. 15 times 14 is 210. Last but not least, getting x by itself. Divide by 10. So x equals what? 21 what?
Gallons.
Gallons, good. 21 gallons. So another thing that you can do that I like better, it's more math correct, is we're trying to get x by itself. So x is being divided by 14. So if you multiply both sides by 14, again, you'd still get 14 times 15 divided by 10. Same thing, it looks better mathematically, but everyone already knows this way, so that's why I'm not going to try to teach a dog new tricks or whatever. Anyways, all right, so in 2005, 11.7 out of 50 employees at a company were women. If there are 47,780 total company employees, estimate the number of women. So we have a rate. So 11.7 women out of 50 total employees. That is our rate. At the same rate, if there's 47,780 total employees, how many, so we're going to call that X, were women. We have a proportion. We have it set up. We can now cross multiply to solve this proportion. So X times 50. 50X equals 11.7 times 47,780. $559,000. And 26. Last but not least, getting x by itself. Divide both sides by 50. We're left over with x equals 11,180.52 women. That's weird to have 0.52 of a person. So we're going to round it to the nearest whole number. My math tells you how to round it too, by the way. So rounding it to the nearest whole number, x equals 11,181 women.
This is crazy because my stepson is in 7th grade and they had these like just the same exact questions, like basically the same thing in 7th grade.
In 7th grade.
It's
good, so you guys can work on your homework together.
Yeah. I was trying to teach him how to do it.
Good.
He's like, what? I'm like, cross multiply.
Yeah.
What do you get if you factor out the amount of civil rights?
Oh my God, I knew that you were going to come up with some. All right, last one. A giant tortoise can travel 0.12 miles in 1 hour. So that's our rate. We can write that as a fraction. 0.12 miles in 1 hour. At this rate, so equals, how long will it take for the tortoise to travel 1 mile? So miles goes up top. We're looking for how long, so X amount of hours. The biggest thing, the reason why I really wanted to include this one is to make sure that miles is on top for both rates. Hours is on the bottom for both rates because they're set equal. Now that we have it set up, we can cross multiply. 0.12 times X, 0.12X equals 1 times 1, which is 1. Solving for X, what would we do? Divide by 0.12. And we're left over with X equals 8.33 hours. Poor guy. 8.33 hours. Make sure that you include your units. X is for hours, so 8.33 hours. So that is Module 8, Homework 2 notes.